So here we were doing Kimte exercise, and the question we were looking at, we created the table structure. We have customers and invoice line. Um, if I look at sales rep and customer table and look at the data here, all these rep IDs are actually present in the customer table as well. If I run this query for the customer, so all these rep IDs here that you're seeing are actually available in the rep ID table. So this is a primary key and this is the foreign key. And the question was raised and people were confused. Actually, not confused. Were going one step more, that when we were creating the schema of these tables, we did not create the foreign key. So can we create the foreign key? Yes. And I stopped there because I don't want to create too much over there at that time when we were creating the tables. So I'm going to share the screen of how in the W3 schools and book will also have it somewhere, but let's look at that. In MySQL you can create it this way. So what you do in MySQL, you can create the table like this. So if there is an order table that you are making, you can create the table like this. Now here is the foreign key part. Foreign key, the key name, references, the table name where it will be coming from, and the primary key that is available in the persons table. So you want to create this key as a primary key, as a foreign key. So this will become a foreign key. This is becoming a foreign key. So foreign key will come here in the brackets after you type foreign key, and then you type references. You're going to say, hey, I want to give you a reference which is available in which table? This table where the primary key is located, and then the brackets, and you'll reference the primary key. How we can do it in very similar way in SQL Server. Syntax is little different. As you can see, this is the Oracle one and Microsoft Access as well. And here you go. Actually, you can look at it here. So while creating the table, I don't know why they have two, but have a look at this. You are saying uh, you want to create, obviously in the order table you want to create, if you are standing in the order table, you want to create order ID as the primary key of this order table. But if you want to refer or constraint, so you will have to add the keyword. In MySQL you don't have to, but here in SQL Server, Oracle and Microsoft Access you have to type constraint. I want to add a constraint, a foreign key constraint. It is called constraint. You will just name it whatever the name you want to create it, fk underscore person in order. So it's a combination of two tables that you are trying to make, so you can just name it as a uh, as a dummy name, but you can say fk, which is foreign key underscore person table, which will be a primary table, order table where it will be used multiple times, and the foreign key, you will say I'm creating a foreign key on the person ID. Get this person ID. I'm going to create a references, and the reference and get all these person IDs should be present in the persons table in the person ID table. So this is how you will create that. Now problem is, this is happening when we were laying down the structure of the table, of the two tables. So I'm going to look at if we have a primary key. So I'm just going to go one step for before, and I'll say I'm going to create a person table. So I'll just copy this, go into my table. I'm going to delete these tables I'm going to create right now, but just wanted to show you what is going to happen because I have schema available. So I'm just going to say create new query, control V. I'm going to create a new table, person table, which I'm going to delete afterwards. But what I'm saying is the primary key is the ID that I'm going to create on. So I'll select this, or even if I don't select this, I can just run it. It will create a person table for me. Let's go ahead, refresh this. and look at the person table. And if you expand person table, and right now there is no data on it, there is no data. But if you look at the if you click on person table which I just created, expand it, it gives me a little more information about it. I'm not going to right click and do it like this and select, show me all the rows, what's the data inside, or I'm not going to script anything or doing anything. I'm just expanding that. This shows me what are the columns in here. As you can see, there is a small key that I can see now that reference me to me that it's a primary key. And primary key pk, and there's a key and integer, not null, so it cannot be null, it has to have a value. And obviously if we are creating a table which has a primary key, key cannot be null. Obviously last name or the first name, last name cannot be null as well. So in this table what they are requiring is that you need to have the last name to have a value. First name, first name cannot have a value, so we can leave it that. And age, we are not restricting that person will give their age. So if I am going to create, if I'll just say insert into dbo dot persons, which is no relation with the kim database, but I'm just going to say id and last name values. So id is the integer, so I cannot have it in quotes. I will just say 1001, that's the person id. And then let's say if I want to say this person with the last name Tay, just just for fun, that's his name. So you might be asking, where are these columns, age and first name and age, where they are? Well, I don't need to give that because my mandatory fields are that cannot be null is id and the last name. So if I have a wish that I want to give, I can do that. But if I don't, there is no one stopping me. So if I'll just say insert, this will actually insert the first row in here. Now what will happen to the person first name and age? Well, it doesn't really matter at this point. All you care is 1001, and the last name and the first name and age can remain empty, can remain empty. So can we enter another person with the first name? Yes. So it really doesn't matter as long as my sequence is mentioned, and this is the last week lecture. Really doesn't matter wherever they come in the sequence, it's not a problem as long as it is matching the values. So if it is the first name, so I want to give the first name as John, and the last and the age, which is also an integer, so I will not be putting in a quote. Let's say if I'll just say 30. So now if I'll run this, it will insert a second person. Duplicate on db person on 1001. Wow, okay, so that's good, that's a good reference. The primary key constraint that we put in actually caught the duplication. So this means any primary key cannot be duplicated, and there you go. It triggered and it did not allow me to insert that record. Whatever it says, it's a whatever it says here, it's not a problem to understand, but here you are violating the primary key constraint and cannot insert a duplicate key in the DBO person table. The duplicate key value is 1001. So this person that you are trying to insert cannot have it, obviously. So if I want to go and say, okay, sorry, I'm going to insert that. So insertion has happened. I have two people which I can verify. Going back into the select query, refresh it by clicking execute. It has now person number 2 with the Same, almost same last name. First name is John and 30. So I have two people now inserted in this record, and we saw primary key in action. Primary key constraint was in action. So what was the issue with the primary key? If you don't give the primary key is the mm, utmost important thing in the table when we are inserting it. If you don't pass it, it will not let you insert that person in that table. And obviously all the null columns which we can see can remain empty. So in our first table, so I will keep this open so because we can do some exercises on this as well and can implement this same logic on here. So when I was creating this, not the question, but I'm going to give you some information. When we were creating the table, we forgot or we did not create the table with the primary key constraint. Although we know that the customer ID is the primary key, and oh, it is created here, so that is good. Did we? Yes, we might have it on this, on that. So primary key is created, but we haven't tested it with the customer, um, giving the two different customer with the same customer ID. We haven't tested it. Now we tested it as well. So if your developer who if let's say you are a backend developer and you create scripts for the backend, if your developer is entering the information from the front end of the database, or front end application, meaning any code coming from JavaScript, any code coming from PHP, any code coming from Python, any code coming from other database as well. If you are inserting the record into this table and that record already existed in this table, it will not allow to insert that record because it will be violating the primary key. So your developer should make sure that each time if the person is added into the person table, he should need to increment +1 to the primary key each time. So whatever is the last ID of the customer, whatever is the last ID, whatever is the last value of the primary key, +1 to that, and then insert that record if they are using the front end logic. There are back end logics as well, which we can use in this stored procedure and give that stored procedure to the developer and say that you can use this stored procedure to insert these records into the table. So it is depending upon how your organization let let the coder do their job, whether the backend will have whether the backend um, person has the responsibility to insert the record. When the record comes in, then your table catches that record and insert it, or whether the front end guy is doing it. If it's a front end developer who is inserting the record, he might be writing the insert query at the front end. Whenever the insert query is happening, they have to make sure that they are adding +1 to that record and sending to the last record and then sending the data to your table. Because if they do that, the record will not be inserted and they will get the error at the front end of the web application or the because nevertheless, wherever it happens, whether if it happens at the error happens at the back end or at the front end. Front end errors are there are the developers errors anyways that they have to fix. But if your table is not able to get those records coming from the front end and it is not able to insert them, it will still throw the error to the front end saying that something has happened, whether it will give you a full information or it will give you the partial information that I was not able to insert the record. What reason? You might be able to see the reason by running that query before it goes to the live environment. Your query that was throwing the error at the back end has to be tested here, whether each time when they are trying to insert the record it is getting inserted. If it is not getting inserted, what is the issue. Sometimes they might have to come down to you and say that here is the query which is inserting the record. You might ask that, can you run this query one more time? And if it is not incrementing it, obviously the primary key violation is happening at the front end. So each time, this is a very common issue that you might see that happens in the developing stage. So question is, if I forget to enter, so let's say if I was creating this table, I'm going to drop this table right now. The person table, I dropped it. Now, if I'm going to create the table, let's say if I'll do this, I'll keep this insert statement. Let's say I forget to add this primary key to the table. Well, this is not the end of the world, but when I will say execute and run this, I'm going to insert this person multiple times, trying to insert it. How many times I inserted it? I'll go and refresh it. Right click on the person, go in there, go in the select query. Where's that? Is that appropriate? No. I have inserted multiple times the ID, multiple times the same person. Well, this is a problem. I cannot have one person being entered so many times. So what should I do? Well, when I was creating this table, I forget that. So I don't have any way to get around it. Well, first thing first is delete all the rows first to make a cleanup of mess. So delete all from dbo.person. So instead of dropping the table, I'm just going to delete everything. So if I'm going to do this, oh sorry, delete from dbo.person. So when I run this, it will delete all those duplicate rows. To verify, run this, nothing is in there. Let's do this. There's another, let's say if I insert it now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Run this query 5 times again. So what I'm doing here, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to delete it from dbo.person, or I can say truncate dbo.person. If I have to fix my syntax, I will fix that. Truncate table. I can use delete from dbo.person, and I can do truncate table. So if I'll do that, there is a slight difference between delete and truncate, but I'm not going to mention it at the moment to add confusion. If I'll just say truncate table or person, because it does not exist or you don't have a permission. I don't have a permission for it. Okay, let's look at that. Should have a permission. Let's go permissions. Let's do this. Add a role. I'm just doing a database administrator here at the moment. I should be able to truncate, but if it is not, let's try that. Users. I have to see the users. Should have a permission on it. What kind of permission I'm missing? Just looking at some of the aspects. DBO. Owned schema. Owner. So I'm the owner of it. I should be able to truncate. But if it is not allowing me, I can Google that and fix this issue. But at the moment, just leave it at this. You can drop all the information. I think you need some extra permission to truncate. So truncate is a dangerous statement as well, equally dangerous as delete from dbo.person. So let's say I'm going to delete, but I was wanted to show you that you can use truncate table dbo.person depending upon what permission issues. If you once resolve all the permission related issues, you should be able to uh, run this query. But these are the things that I was talking about. These permissions related stuff, mostly 90 to 95% of the time, you will be working in these areas: tables and views and programmability. Database administrators not only know all of these, but he knows what commands that you can run in SQL Server with what permissions. And as I just saw that I I don't know too many permission related things in the database, and I don't know where to go and give me a permission to truncate the table. So I will ask my DBA, hey, can you help me to give me a truncate permission on the table? Highly unlikely they will not give you permissions on those kind of. So you have to kind of struggle sometimes, beg for the permission if there is permission that you need and you don't have it, because they are dangerous commands and can um, cause loss in the database. So sometimes um, you might see drop permission on the table or drop permission on the database is only given to the actual database owners and database administrator who are maintaining the database, because database administrator is a separate job itself in itself to give the permission and revoking permission. 90% of the time you will be writing select queries. Some, not all the time, you will be writing the delete or truncate. So that's why the permission is issue here. So I go ahead and I'll live with this and I'll run this. So all the 6 rows are deleted. So not the end of the world. If uh, I have created a table with the primary key, that's fine. But if I forgot, I can still create the primary key afterwards. So let's say I did not create it, and now I am going to, before I create it, I want to play with SQL Server mind, and I say that okay, let me insert a couple of duplicates. I want to play with SQL Server. Right now there are 3 records. Now I want to add the constraint now, which says I want to add this primary key now. Problem is, here's the small or big problem. When I am going to insert this primary key constraint on it, problem is there are already 3 records being entered with the same ID. When I will try to add the constraint, SQL Server should complain saying that, hey, you are trying to add a primary key constraint. So this you will write this way: altered the table. You are not creating the table now. Table already is created. Table has the data. Now you want to play with it and say that, hey, I forgot to enter that. So can I alter you? It says, okay, yes, you can alter me. What is the syntax of it? Alter the table. What is this name? Person. Add this primary key constraint to it, which is add primary key. So you don't have to type constraint or anything. You say add primary key on which column? ID column. So let's say if I'll do this now, I should get an error. Hey, I was trying to add the constraint that you have requested. Problem is there is already some records with the duplicates in it, 1002. So I cannot do this. So problem should be resolved first. I will say, okay, whether it's up to me, should I go and update those 3 records by going in here? So let's say, okay, I'll go to the persons table. I'll go to edit top 200 rows. Given that there's not too many rows are inserted, I'll just go here and manually change this. There's another way of doing it. No row was updated. Okay, so it is not allowing me to update this. it is saying that the message row update either not make sure the unique and multiple rows 3. Okay, so I'm not able to do this way. It's giving me an error. It should not, but if it is giving me the error, okay, so I'll go to the, I'm not even able to click to the next row. So when you are, so you see the problem when you are done inserting the data, how painful it can become for you to change one single row, because now it is giving me all the weird errors. So if I will be panicked, I will just say that get rid of all those 3 records, I can reinsert it again. But if it will be 1000 records, what you will do, you will have a lot more things on your hand. You will be entering all those. So when you are creating the table, make sure you add the constraint when you are creating the table, or if you forget, just soon after. So if I forget in it, my problem is I cannot insert the primary key constraint now because the 3 rows are already there. So I will first say delete. So all the 3 extra duplicates were deleted and nothing is duplicate is available now. Can I do it now? Let's see. Yes, I can. So lot more easier once I get rid of the records and then I'm able to insert the primary key. So make sure when you are creating, if you can add it here, good. If you forget, make sure you have it soon after in your script. So you should be able to create the script in such a way that sequence should matter. So if I will be you, my first sequence will be, if I forget it, I should not forget it. If it looks, this looks easier to me, that's fine. If this does not look easier to me, I can go on the SQL Server way of creating the primary key and should not miss out this way. So best thing, create it in the while you are creating the schema. If you don't, yes, you can still do it, but make sure you don't have uh, any record in it. If it has record, then that record should not be duplicated record. If there are duplicated records, then you have a bigger problem to solve. Can you drop a primary key constraint? Just like you can add a primary key constraint, you can drop a primary key as well, but that can happen afterwards. So in MySQL, you can do it this way. In SQL Server, you can do it this way. So primary key can be added, primary key can be dropped, primary key will be added after the table creation, yes, but there is a slight problem that if you have no data and no duplicate data, if you have 1002 and 1003, no problem, it would have been able to do that, no problem. But one single duplicate, if you have tens of thousands of records and if you have 2 duplicates, only 2, then you still have to go through different panes of bringing the data in. Now, fixing the data or fixing the duplicate. What are those 2? It will actually let you know what are the duplicate keys it has found, but it will, I think, will able to tell you one at a time, or it's up to you if you write a query to find duplicates in your table, and that's not a difficult to find thing, that how you can find the duplicates in your table. Very next thing afterwards is foreign key constraint. If you forget to add the foreign key constraint, or if you want to add it afterwards, yes, you can add the foreign key afterwards. So similar to primary key, you can add foreign key constraint while you are creating. Usually I like to create foreign keys afterwards, lot more easier or visually to see. When we are creating the foreign keys, when we are creating the tables, it creates a lot more trouble. So instead of doing that, I like, or I would suggest that create uh, foreign key constraint after that. So what are the foreign key constraint? Alter table, order, add foreign key constraint on this foreign key preferences person ID. So can we do this? So if I'll take this cheat sheet with me, copy this at the time when we were creating that schema, so I don't need this anymore. I'll delete that. I don't need this. I don't need so many tabs. I can get rid of those. Nothing is saved. Right click, new query. Okay, alter table, and I want on the customer, I know I want to add a primary key constraint on the customer table. So I don't need to type it. I can just drag it here and put it here dbo.customer. So I don't even have to type it. So alter table dbo.customers on the customers table. The foreign key I want to create on is which table, which column. So column that name is rep ID. Can I drag and drop? Yeah. Foreign key, but it was on the wrong spot, so I can delete this person ID. And if I take this foreign key rep ID here, I can drop it here. References from which table? It is coming from which table? It is coming from sales rep table. So I'll say okay, delete this, and I want to take this from the sales rep table. And what is the ID in the sales rep table? What is the column name? It is this one, so I can get rid of this and drag and drop it here. So I mapped that statement to this new statement. So initially when I created this, I did not add other script when I gave you guys through the messages on the course. I did not give you this, and it wasn't given in the script as well. I'm just looking at, if you look at this script, there is sales rep. There is no primary key here. Where is that? There is no primary key here even in the primary key. So now, oh, here it is. The primary key is here. That's good. Primary key is here. There is no foreign key constraint that he created. Now, based on our knowledge, which I just gave you, can I create the foreign key? Yes, I do create the foreign key. So now if I'll say execute, let's see what happens. It did create the foreign key constraint for me. So if I'll expand this, primary key constraint is already there, which was there. If I'll go on the customer table and go to the keys, here you go. It is adding some garbage in front of it, but as you can see, primary key on the customer table is PK, which is on customer ID. If I'll go ahead and script this key, I can see the script of this key. Let's modify this. No. Let's look at the script of it. So everything is very, very well scripted. So if I'll go here and right click and say, can you give me this one? I don't want to do it right now. I will not run it, but I want to check what is happening. So here it is saying that I will drop the primary key and re-add the primary key, but here's the primary key. Alter table customer, add primary key. Clustered, don't worry about it. I will come to that in a moment later on. So on the table customers, add a primary key on which column? Customer ID in ascending order. And it does all these other bells and whistles, but more of what we know of W3 schools, we understand this part of the code. Alter table, DBO customers, add primary key on this table. That's fine. But have a look at this one. We just recently created this foreign key. So script key, create to and drop to, and let's see. Or even if I'll say create to, that should be okay. alter table dbo, drop this constraint, it adds some garbage to it, but this is the query that we just created. It adds some kind of a notation for it, but as long as we know that we have the primary key with checks, doesn't matter. Add foreign key on this column from which table the primary key is. So as you know that W3 school is not as detailed as your SQL server is, but as long as you know what you are doing, if you're not sure what this is, it is adding, Google this and we'll be able to find it out. So yes, we can add the foreign key. So now if I want to add a customer, and let's say here is the good thing that I can do now. I have rep is 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. Do I have any rep that is 0, 6? No. Do I have any rep that is number 11? No. So let's say if I'll just go ahead and copy this row, and I'm going to close all these other things just that I wanted to show you. And let's say if I'll just copy this, Control V, insert into this customer. I want to add a new customer, customer number 126, Joy Smith or Joe Smith. Make him on 5th Street, city code, blah blah blah, 18, and let's say he has $90, 68 cents on the balance. And now if I'll say add it with the customer with the rep ID of 6, do you think it will let me add that? No. Why? Because 06 does not exist in my sales rep, and I am violating the foreign key concept here. The rep 06 must first exist in the rep sales rep table so he can add a customer. So not ordinary XYZ person can stand up and say I am the sales rep of this company and I am going. So that is why when you call your bank or you are a annoyed customer, when you call that and you say that, can I have your ID because I'm not satisfied with your services, can I talk to your manager? What is your rep ID? And that is the same rep ID that he or she has to give you, that you will refer that who is dealing with you. And when they were dealing with you, they entered all your customer information. But if you're not happy, you can do that. But let's say if you say that, oh, if I give you my rep ID, which is does not exist, and I'm being little tricky so that you cannot file a complaint against me, I give you XYZ's rep ID. I don't want to put my colleague to be in trouble, but let's say if I did, if I'll just say execute, it says that in the rep table, there is no person with this rep ID. The conflict in the database in the KIMT table, this person foreign key constraint jumped up here, and foreign key now says that. So you have now seen what is the purpose of primary key constraint, what is the purpose of foreign key constraint. Foreign key is more of a hey, no, you are not allowed uh, stepping on your palm saying that no, this person does not exist, so you cannot add this customer. So customer can only be added by a rep ID, which is the valid rep ID. So now if I'll say 5 and I add a rep, and now I'm able to add Joe Smith because this rep ID is a valid rep ID. So you might be asking, let's say if there was a rep that existed and let's say he left the company, what will happen to that? Well, if that rep exists in the database, whenever he left and you did not delete it, the record of those records will uh, If you delete it, it has to be a cascade delete. All those, so all the primary keys from the primary table has to be deleted, and then those orders or those customers will also be deleted. Before those customers will be deleted, or before those orders will be deleted, first thing first is you have to come to the primary, you have to come to the root table, which is the sales rep, get rid of that guy, and then you can go ahead. uh, no, you actually have to first, so it's a very tricky situation whether egg has to be broken first or the chicken has to come out first. So I haven't done that for a long time, but I think of, so if you try to delete any customer from the customers table which has the rep id, if you try to delete it, it will let you delete it. So you will delete it from the customers table, all the customers that were belonging to 05. So all the child objects has to be deleted. Once all the child objects are deleted, you can go in the primary table, sales rep table, and delete the sales rep from there, and then you will be able to delete it. But if you try to delete the sales rep first and not deleting the uh, customers that has the sales rep id 05, if you try to delete the sales rep first, it will complain that no, you cannot delete the sales rep first because this sales rep has the customers in the customers table. So those customers have to be deleted first, or the child table has to be emptied first, or the foreign key table has to be emptied first before you remove the uh, sales rep itself. Now, in what situations you want to get rid of your customers? Probably not. You still want to keep those customers, probably reassign the new sales rep to them. That is one solution. Or the other thing is, you still want to keep the same rep ID which you have fired from the company. Still, you will keep those rep IDs in there so you don't have to worry about data changes. But if you are going to reassign all the customer to the new rep id, which is 30 or something, whichever rep id you want to choose for the new guy who is starting in the company, you will need to run the update query, which we will learn later on, so that all the rep IDs that were belonging, all the customers which have rep ID 05 will should now pointing to be the new rep ID that you are creating. But that's a different topic, that how to move. First of all, we usually don't delete in the database. What we use is the word archive, or we use something called update. So deletion is not a good habit in database. So you just go ahead and delete the record because you lose track of information. And particularly in a bigger companies, in the larger environments, you need tracking, right? So in a smaller company, you assign and reassign. But in the bigger companies, you might want to be seeing some of the history. Who was the sales rep before this? Who created this? Whether he is in the company or not. If you would have deleted his record from the database, you will not have any evidence to prove it. That is why there will always be a history tables that you will be requiring in bigger companies and in bigger database, so you can keep track of history of what has happened to this customer, or who he was dealing with, and what was the sales rep, if whether that sales rep in the company or not in the company. If it is not in the company, don't think of deleting the record, just mark it as disabled, right? So disabled, you can move them to a disabled, so that at least you can go back and see what their name was, what their id was. Not that you are filing a lawsuit against that rep now, but at least you can see, oh, this person does not work for us anymore. You have a little bit more information instead of having, how come we have created this these records if this person does not even exist, Well, it exists, but the record has been moved to the archived. So usually deleting the record is not a good idea. Marking them disabled or dormant is a better way to do it, to keep most of your data so you can track back.